right, so here we are in our resources document still, and I'm going to talk about how to get started with our resources if you are a student. So there's a few places in the guide for you to get started exploring the resources, and the link to this guide should be in the chat, or if you're watching later on YouTube, in the video description. So the place that we recommend for students to get started is actually this series of 4 workshops from one of our co-organizers, Alex Johnston, that's all about career management. There is a 5th one in the series, salary and benefits, but especially if you're at the beginning of your job exploration, you can wait until a little bit later to watch that. So this just gives you really a way to get started on, how do you even go about figuring out what you're interested in, planning for that career transition, and getting lists together of like the skills that you have, the transferable skills, the coursework that you took, how you can take all of that and start out on your career exploration. So those are from last summer, from July of 2024. What we recommend watching next is actually this one. So this is from our 2021 program with Daniel Moglin from UC Davis. This is career exploration through the lens of self. This is a pretty short one, but it is the idea of thinking about like, what kind of values do you have? And what does that mean about what sort of work you might want to do? Maybe that's something you already know, but if you haven't thought too much about how, who you are might intersect with what you want to do, this can be a really good place to start thinking about that. We have a couple of, scrolling down to getting started beyond academia. We have a couple of general panels. So this discussion of career opportunities for linguists and linguists in unexpected places. These are both videos that will give you a little bit, like whet your appetite a little bit about what linguists might be able to do out in the working world, and hopefully spark some ideas for you about what you might find interesting. The next one that we would recommend looking at is the career panel, Getting Your First Job Beyond Academia. You might notice that this is also from LCL 2021, but a lot of what everything everybody talks about in this panel really does still apply, even though, the technical landscape is a little bit different here in 2025. The economic situation is a little bit different, because so much of it is about like a personal and inward focus rather than looking at the market, how people went about organizing their own job search, how they felt about their job search. And similarly, we have this panel from 2020, which is actually live from an LSA from the immediately pre-pandemic LSA. That's a student panel on preparing to change roles. So both that and the First Job Beyond Academia can kind of get you in that mindset of what that transition period might look like. If you're feeling ready to explore jobs, but you haven't graduated yet, or you're not particularly close to graduating, we would recommend going back up to the career management section to watch our LCL 24 panel on getting an internship. Getting an internship can be a great way to get your feet wet in any industry or an industry that you're interested in working in. Of course, we all know that there are many inequities in the field of internships because so many internships are unpaid, but I am aware of many universities and departments that do have funding for students to be able to take an unpaid internship. So you can take an unpaid internship, but get paid by your program or your university so that you can take advantage of that opportunity. So that's something that you can look into if you see an unpaid opportunity of interest. And then lastly, in the videos list, the videos that I want to highlight here, if you're having trouble with this transition, which we know some people are, if you've gone into grad school, particularly thinking that you might want to be going to be the path for you. Charlotte Lindy gave a talk in 2021 that again is very inward focused, so still relevant a few years later, about how to navigate that inner journey as you make this sort of transition. Okay, so I've talked about a few kind of generic things to look at to get started. From here, what I recommend doing once you have kind of an idea of what are some things linguists can do, how do you start to organize yourself for the transition, start looking at the different sector divisions that we have, or like fields of focus that we have. Maybe you know an area of interest already. Maybe you're looking for a new one. We have things divided up into several categories here. So user experience, user interfaces, voice user interfaces, technical communication, technology, which is subdivided into NLP, data science, and AI, as well as, you can see we have a lot of tech stuff, as well as education technology, naming and storytelling, which is a bit of a rebrand for marketing and branding, government at the federal, state, or municipal level, translation, interpretation, localization, nonprofits, research and publishing. And then, of course, people find their own way, right? Entrepreneurship. And we have, in addition, a lot of other things that people do that didn't quite fit into one of the resource sections that we have. So you can get a good sense of a lot of these areas by watching like 1 to 2 videos from each section, or listen to a podcast episode just to get an idea of if you want to explore more, figure out what you want to put more time and effort into. And then finally in this document, we also have some additional resources that are down here. These are just sort of things that we like, but they can help when you're prepping for interviews. So something like the STAR interview method or behavioral interview prep can be good for that pre-job stage, that job search stage. But once you get the job, you might want to be thinking about the value of, small talk, like water cooler talk at work. You might run into some conflicts at work and you want to seek some advice. Ask a manager is great for that. And then if you want to, change your institution that you're working for, we really like Rebels at Work for that. And then, of course, the Anthropology Career Readiness Network as well. They have that instructor section, and they also have a section that's specifically for students. They have a lot of one-pagers on things like elevator pitches, how to talk about your research. So just a really valuable set of resources that we think linguists can make great use of as well. You can, of course, follow us on LinkedIn. That's where we post all of our updates. And you can follow us on YouTube. You can find our YouTube channel in any of the YouTube links above. And we have actually been posting recently on LinkedIn. We've been posting like recaps of everything that we did last summer. We finally have finished releasing all of those videos to YouTube, and we've released them grouped by different things like hands-on workshops that we did, tech, research, etc. So that might be another way to explore some of our resources. And on the note of LinkedIn, and I will show our LinkedIn page here. So this is our LinkedIn page that you can check out. We've been posting fairly frequently as we've been releasing all of this content. If you don't have a LinkedIn yet, get one. If you do have one, but you have not started building your network, you can actually use our resources as a way to get started with that. So you can see all of us as organizers listed here in the document. But if you watch a video and you find something interesting, so maybe you listen to Jackson's interview on the podcast and you think clean tech sounds really exciting, write him a message and say, hey, I heard you say this, and I thought it was really interesting, and I'd love to talk about it more. I'd love to learn more. So these sorts of resources, even though they're a one-sided engagement, can be a really good way to help you start building that network. And I will add, that when you do reach out to someone that way, like make sure to put that message in your connection request to say where you saw them, why you thought it was interesting. That's going to up your chances of getting them to accept it, getting them to accept your connection request. But also do keep in mind that when you reach out in that like not quite cold way, that sometimes people won't get back to you. And it's not you, it's just people are busy. They may not check LinkedIn very frequently. But so many of our participants in the podcast and in our many, many videos that you can see we've done over the years, they're really enthusiastic about paying it forward, paying for the career help that they received, and are generally willing to help folks chart their own journey as they move through career exploration. So that's sort of the overview of what I have for students.